Hello and welcome to ExpoTalks episode 6. My name is Matt, and here today with me, Irina. Hi, Irina.
Hello.
And also our guest today, Lisa Schulteis, the founder and owner of the ElectraLime Marketing, YourEventMarketplace, as also the executive director of Northwest Event Show. And here with us as well, we have Ross, the CEO of ExpoFP, our interactive floor plans platform. So welcome, guys.
Hello.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning. Nice to see you all. And I would like to present the topic of our webinar. The topic of our webinar is how to choose event tag for your trade show. And the story behind this is that I feel that many event organizers are bombarded with the messages from event tag providers about different event tag. And we would like to figure out and to help other event organizers to choose, to make the right choice when it comes to event tag. So my first question will be to you, Lisa. So how do you understand, when do you understand that you need some particular event tag? How do you understand this?
Yeah, and you're right. We do get bombarded. My email every day has probably at least 5 emails from different event tech providers. So we definitely get bombarded with it. But for us, we really look at what the client needs for that particular event, right? So who is who are the attendees? What is the purpose of the event? And then we can start looking at, okay, what event tech do we need for that? If we're doing a smaller event where maybe we're going to be sitting in the same room all day, that's going to be much different than if we're doing a much larger event where we're multiple rooms, multiple floors, potentially different buildings. In terms of production levels, in terms of, even using ExpoFP, anything that we're using. So we really look at what is the event, what is the goal of the event, and who's attending so that we can start making those decisions.
Okay, thank you. I think it's quite clear that when we are trying to understand what we need, the first thing we need to think about is the goal. What is the goal of the event? What is the goal? What I want to achieve using this tag or another tag? So that's quite clear. Matt, do you have any questions?
Yeah, but for Ross, I do have a question. Since we're talking about goals, so what are the most common goals that you can reach with an event tag?
Lisa is great in this respect because the last Northwest event show that I attended, I was actually surprised myself. We exhibitors ourselves, so we exhibited at tons of events. And on Northwest event show, what surprised me is how well everything is integrated. I loved using the tools. I loved using exhibitor management. And of course, I'm biased because Lisa selected us as their floor plan providers. Good choice, Lisa.
Yeah,
but
great choice.
The whole stack was from the providers that, in my opinion, suited the best. I think the common goal is to make event tech as transparent as possible, because people who come to the event, they're not there to play on their phones. They're not there to deal with your buttons or to pay attention how the search works or read a manual on how to use an app. The event tech is something that is like a plumbing. It should be in the background and should just plain work. So it is a facilitator of interaction that we expect from events. It is something that needs to make this interaction as smooth as possible. This means that if I need to communicate with someone, I don't really need to learn. I want to talk to a guy from this company. And the process from A to B should be as short, as seamless as possible. If I don't notice this, if I'm like, yeah, I wanted to talk to this guy, I use the app and I talk to this guy. That's the best. If, oh no, yeah, I asked my friend how to use the app and how to find this button, this is wrong. This is not good. The same with okay, I need to find that company. How do I get there? Okay, you're opening your floor plan, you're finding the route, you're finding how to get there. And it's like natural, everything, all of the buttons are familiar, everyone pressed the button directions, everyone used it in Google Maps, and it's all obvious, and you know where to go. That's it. That's what we want to do. So as long as we make help people do what they do, as long as we blend in the background, I think that's the goal of event technology, and that's pretty good criteria for in choosing right tools for you for event.
I
Yeah,
see
and I'm
that.
gonna add on to that a little bit because you're right. When we choose event tech, we look at two sides of it, right? We look at what the user experience is going to be.
Mhm.
And, Ross, you're right. We want them to be able to use it, but we don't want them to have to think about it, right? We
Exactly.
just
Yeah.
want it to be natural. We want it to be seamless, whether we're using wayfinding, whether we're using closed captioning, our registration systems, right? When people have to start thinking about it, that's when I start getting complaints. And that is the last thing I want. So we
Yeah.
want from the attendee side to be as seamless as possible. And then selfishly from the admin side, I want it to be as seamless as possible, right? So I can guarantee you every event tech company I work with, I've had at least one conversation about APIs, getting systems to talk to each other. You and I have talked about APIs. So it's always that conversation too of how can I make my life easier? Because the closer I get to an event, the crazier things get, right? It's just the way
Yeah.
that shows run. So those are the two areas we look at is what's the attendee experience first, right? That's the most critical. And then what is the admin experience on the back end? And both of those get evaluated when we're looking at event tech.
Lisa, maybe I was thinking about that, and yes, we're paying a lot of attention of how difficult it's for us to manage an event, how difficult to manage speakers, exhibitors, collect all of this information, sign all of these contracts, send invoices, all bunch of the things that attendees actually do not see. It's our work. But I look at it from the point of view of how many users and how many eyeballs are on a particular process. And if I would weigh between attendees and internal event staff, I would say that attendees are the most important. So the arguable point that I believe is that there's different aspects of event technologies, but the most critical, in my opinion, and you may totally disagree with me, in my opinion, it's event app. So that's the main tool that attendees use. That's the main thing that they use. And as long as the usability of application event app is great, as long as everything is integrated, tied into this application, as long as they can find meetings, find their way within the app and just enjoy using that, that's what determines their satisfaction with event technology at the event or dissatisfaction. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think we've all been to events where, maybe there is a, hosted buyer added in.
Yeah.
And you see one event app for the event, and then there's a second event app for the hosted buyer, right? And sometimes
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
third event app for
Separate.
God knows what. And it makes it very difficult on the attendees, right? So
Yes.
we want to have, again, it's going back to that seamless experience, right? If you're going to use multiple platforms, they have to talk to each other to where everything comes into the main event app. And we work very hard on our end to make sure that that experience is amazing. I think we've all had events where maybe whatever tech we were using didn't work quite as well as we wanted it to. And you hear about it very quickly. So it's a very quick and obvious learning experience. Because attendees want that ease. They want things to be right where they are, right? They don't want to have to open 5 different things. They want the information to be there and easy to use. And then if you have, a trade show component on that as well, then, your exhibitors and sponsors are the next ones that you're looking at to make sure that everything that you're doing for
Exactly.
them is
Yeah.
appropriate. And then, we come last, right? I still look at that
Yeah.
selfishly because I want my life to be easier. But I will always hit the attendees and the exhibitors first, and then figure out how to make my life easier at the end.
Speaking about making life of the attendees and sponsors easier, I cannot mention wayfinding feature. We already mentioned it, but still, Lisa, do you remember the first time when you tried wayfinding, digital wayfinding feature? What was your reaction and what was the feedback from your attendees when you first applied it?
Yeah, so the first time I used it, I was actually at a very large show, and these large shows, I know the stickers are on the floor, but they aren't always on the floor in the order that I think that they should be on the floor. So for me personally, using wayfinding, it was like, oh my gosh, this is so easy, right?
Mhm.
And I am geographically challenged. You can ask my husband, he hates it. I'm the person that, he sits there and says, go down the road and in 3 blocks turn east. And I'm like, okay, right or left, right? Like, just tell me right or left. And he
Actually,
hates it. But and I'm also a visual person, right? So I'm like, oh, you mean turn left at the gas station, right? So the gas
Mhm.
station never leave, right? So I am incredibly directionally challenged for whatever reason. I'm really good at other things, not that. So for me personally, the wayfinding was amazing. I mean, it was very easy for me to sit there and follow the dots, and very similar to when I'm driving down the road with Google Maps and it telling me where I'm going to go next. And
Mhm.
the attendees have the same reaction, right? And it's interesting because I've actually had to ask attendees what they thought about it, because it was just something that they inherently had in there, right? They went in there and went, yep, I can do this. It's super easy. And it's just like finding a map, but they didn't actually maybe process that they were doing it, if that makes any sense.
Exactly. Yeah,
So,
Yeah.
that's exactly what we were talking
right,
about.
right. So it was great. And I've actually had to ask attendees, like, what did you think? And they were like, oh, yeah, no, that was great, but it's almost an afterthought for them, which is exactly what we want. And especially even, Northwest Event Show, we are on 4 floors in that building. So we have the main level where you come in as our check-in, and then you can either go upstairs to an exhibit floor or downstairs to an exhibit floor. And then
Mhm.
above that, we also have classrooms where we have, education going on. So we have 4 floors there. And the first year we were in the building, it was a brand new building to us. It was a brand new building to our attendees. The building had only been open for 3 months, I believe.
Wow.
So brand new building, no one had been there yet.
It's
Mhm.
And,
actually so beautiful,
across,
such a beautiful
oh,
building, by
it's
the way.
beautiful building. I love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, being across those 4 floors, the wayfinding was essential because we have to be able to, get people from one floor to the next.
Lisa, surprisingly, not everyone thinks that. Even right now, we're like making tons of like floor plans for events, and in a lot of cases, people don't even think about ordering the same wayfinding for the rooms.
Right.
Like I can't mention how many times you probably attended more events than I do. You come somewhere, you need to find a room, and it's not on the map because it wasn't ordered. It wasn't thought about it. But you need to find the room, so
Right.
you're like running around trying to find it. Why not to put it on the same map? Just guys, its floor plans are not just for the trade show floor. It's for your
Mhm.
seminars, for everywhere people go. More than that, if you have some spaces outside of your venue, for example, there's hotel where 90% of your people live in nearby hotels, add navigation to them as well. It's
Right.
it's that simple. Just you need to mention it and just keep in mind that it's possible, it's doable, and you should do it. No
Yeah.
brainer.
And when I first was introduced to all of you, it was for a client that we had a very large event, and it was multi-building in a very large city. So the buildings were next to each other, but it was still multi-building. And I was trying to convince them to utilize Expo FP. And we were within a couple weeks of the event and they wouldn't do it right because budget is tight and everything else. And I was like, but it's such a small amount of money for what we're trying to do here. And it's going to be so much more effective than the JPEG images of the maps, right? Where we have to scroll around and try to figure out where you're going. And oh wait, there's multi-level here too, and you can't really show that very well. So and it was a frustration of mine because I knew, we had 7,000 people in person. I knew that we could make their lives so much easier. And in that case, the client was just, last minute budget. They're not willing to push it any further. And I was like, the amount of money that you're spending here is so insignificant compared to 7,000 people that are going to be asking you how to get to room 57.
That's right.
Right? Like it was super frustrating for me because I'm like, I have the solution for you and it's so easy for us to handle this. So that's something that we run into too, right? Like, Northwest Event Show, I get to call it. It's great.
Yeah,
I get to make all the decisions, which is good and bad in the long run. But with the majority of my clients, I can only make the suggestion and make the case for it. And sometimes, unfortunately, they say no. And you can see what happens when they say no, because it's a little bit more of a frustration point for the attendees.
So Lisa, I am that kind of person that I need people to tell me where to go. Like I don't memorize things. I have a very bad memory. And for me, top one feature is wayfinding, of course. But for you, what are the most essential features of the mobile app in your point of view?
It really goes back to information, right? The biggest thing that we have issues with events is communication and not communicating well. So if an attendee can go to a mobile app and find all the information that they need, then that's what we're doing well. So for us, it is including everything from the agenda obviously is very important, right? They need to be able to know what's happening when. We always include in the floor plan because that's essential. So we always embed it into whatever platform we're using. Information on the speakers, but then also, ways for them to engage with each other, right? So we always want attendees to be able to connect with other attendees. That is the entire purpose of us having an event in the first place, right? Is to be able to really promote that engagement, not only with us, but between the attendees. We want these events to provide those introductions, to provide those potential partnerships. And so it's really important for us to have those profiles in there that are actually being used, right? Messaging that is actually being used, scheduling meetings that's being used, not spammed, right? You always have at least one person that just goes through and spams everybody. But it's really important to us to have pretty much, everything that they need for the show in the palm of their hand, right? So we really look at all of those different things, from the agenda to the networking to information on the speakers to the floor plan to, all of those different, integrated parts, so that they can schedule meetings, so that they can really expand their network in a meaningful way. And that's what's really important to us.
Do you remember probably some interesting feature or event app, probably at your show that you used, or probably at some other event show, at some other trade show, that you saw this feature? It probably could be interaction feature, communication, whatever. And you thought like, that's great. Why nobody does this? I don't know whether it happened with you or not.
Actually, and I'm about to head back to that show here in a couple of weeks in London. Last year at the meeting show in London, one of the things that they ask in your profile questions, they ask a lot of questions in your profile questions. But one of the things that they ask is what topics are you interested in, right? So I put those in, and probably about a week before the show. And their AI in their platform, I don't even know what platform they use. I need to find out. Their AI in their platform actually matches you with sessions. So I would get an email the day before. So it's a 2-day show So on day 0, right, the day before day 1, I received an email said it said based on your selections, here's the sessions that you're probably going to be interested in, and it listed them all out in the email. And I
Cool.
went, wow, like I don't have to scroll through all those sessions to figure it out. They just outlined everything for me. And then I got the email on the end of day 1.
And was it
Here's the
actually
sessions
useful?
for
Was
day
it something that matched
Yeah, I
your
mean,
interest
it was
well?
great. So, I had put sustainability, I think I had put, I don't remember, probably event tech, whatever it was.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it actually went through and pulled the sessions that matched the topics that I had chosen. And so it just made it that much easier for me to decide what sessions I wanted to go to. They're a nice size show. All of their stages are on the floor, so you don't leave the floor. But it was nice because it told me, okay, now I want to go over to this stage over here in this corner at 2 o'clock in the afternoon because I want to it was a great session. DEI and gin tasting at like 4 in the afternoon. It was a nice combination, right? Let's talk about DEI while we taste gin. But it was a great setup because then everything was marked in this email. It was marked in my app. I could easily find where I wanted to go. So it was a really nice feature.
I have
Yeah.
a next to Ross actually, because everything is good on paper. We have different event tag, some of it is useful, some of it is not that useful. But how do you ensure that event tag will work smoothly at a trade show? And what is your advice to event organizers, Ross, to ensure also that event tag will work? What should they do?
Well, that's a pretty tough question, and Lisa is the one who probably went through tons of pains with that. Let me add my 2 cents, but really after that I'll just give microphone to Lisa. I think that secondary part would be testing everything like well in advance of everything as soon as possible, just because things will break, especially when there's a lot of moving pieces, and if you want the best, it's never from one company, it's a combination. And some companies are well integrated, they worked in multiple shows, some companies did not work together, so you just need to see how it works before that and just pay attention to that. But I would stress some other point. In selecting proper event tech, the worst thing you could do is to sit with one provider for years, for dozens of years, without ever taking your time to reevaluate what you are getting and what else is on the market. I totally understand the point of view that, oh, everything is working and why would we change that? You know why? Because I constantly hear this point of view from people who use PDFs instead of instead of interactive floor plans. Everything is working. Well, not really. You just don't really know how many people are frustrated, or you don't hear them well. Because if you're using PDF, you are missing out on millions of things. The same way with event tech. If somebody using some old provider who didn't bother to update their tech for 10 years, for 15 years, and you continue using them just because you're like good buddies with that company, you're making disservice to your company and to your event. Whoever you're using, I totally understand that there's an effort to switch to another provider, but you need to reevaluate what you are getting and what others are getting, because there are great companies on the market and there's some companies that are not great. So every time when I'm seeing some people working with some companies that are not great, I'm asking them why would you do that? And the answer is usually, well, we worked with them for years, we're happy. It's a mistake. You need to see what's out there. You need to evaluate periodically, like, I don't know, every 2 years or something. Don't make a mistake of sitting. That's actually the reason we are working on with some app providers that I think are just fantastic. So we have very tight integration and practically doing all of them apps for Grip, Expo Platform, Swapcard. I think they are the best in this in the app provider's business. I don't know, and actually it's an interesting question to follow-up question to ask Lisa after that. What other app providers? Maybe just name the names, because we are just, so far we didn't name a single company, but let's name our heroes. And for me, this three are great. Session board actually is fantastic. I loved the exhibitor management. I loved the back end. Right now we integrated with them. We are like using their schedulers on several events. Just love these guys. So if I can redirect question to Lisa, how to make sure that event technology works smoothly, and follow-up question, what are actually providers of most essential component, the application providers that you like? Lisa?
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, I mean, obviously testing, right? But even before that is making sure that we really understand how it works. And I think, that's something that the event tech salespeople, I think, can all do a better job at, all of them. Because I don't know how many times that we think we know everything, and then we get the tech, and then there's like one thing that I'm like, wait, what? Like, you didn't tell me that. Now I have to have this extra, audio out to the software, right? Or something along those lines. So I think understanding what the tech does on the front end, and then testing, and then also testing it with whoever it's going to be affecting. So for example, with our closed captioning service, I immediately connected our AV team with that closed captioning service to say, okay, you guys, go make sure you play in the sandbox nicely, right? Make it work. I don't want to think about it. I want I tell people all the time, I'm like, I want the magic wand. Give me the magic wand. Just make it work. And actually my AV production team this year in Seattle, as we were wrapping up the show, they actually gave me a present, and they gave me a magic wand. It was super sweet. So I actually have a physical magic wand in my house, because they delivered on what they promised. But anyway, so yeah, it's definitely testing a lot. But then it's also communicating. Anytime we introduce new software, I've done it myself, where you make the mistake and you make the assumption that the attendees are just going to be able to figure it out, right? And that's not true. So we have to communicate better to our attendees as to not only what the software is, but why we're using it, why we want them to use it, and how easy it is to use. And that gets to be a challenge, because sometimes we end up 50,000 emails over communicating things before a show, but it really is essential to say, here's a feature that we've incorporated into the show. This is why we've incorporated it into the show. And this is how you use it and why you want to, because it's going to make your life easier. So really having that piece as well. So, we have the testing on the tech side, but then we also have the communication on the attendee side. In terms of some of our favorite platforms, tech stack wise. So obviously I love ExpoFP, imagine that. So you guys are definitely on that list. Session board, we've been using them for a couple of years. Love them. And then we use Get Registered for our registration, which is great. Absolutely. Again, when I can walk away from registration and check in was seamless, it's a great day. We incorporate Interprify for our closed captioning and translation. And then for the main event platform, I love EventMobi. They actually, you talk about that magic wand. They just magically made an API connection between them and Get Registered for me. And so the minute somebody registered, they were in our platform, and I didn't have to do an import and an export and a CSV file, and and there's a lot of capabilities within their platform. So that's kind of, my favorite tech stack. I'm hoping I'm not forgetting anybody. But yeah, we definitely have our favorite tech stack. We use what our clients request, but if they allow us to make suggestions, I definitely make the suggestions. So, and, I think the really important thing too is don't be afraid to ask, right? I mean, I ask people, I have every single company, there is a Lisa wish list, whether they like it or not, right? I have a Lisa wish list of here's all the amazing things your software already does. Now here's the things that Lisa wants to add, right?
Mm-hmm.
API is always on that list. I think we really need to get better with all of the companies of allowing software to talk to each other. Um, I've had companies that say, oh, we have an open API and we have webhooks and you can, and I'm like, no, 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 no. There's no you in this, right? Like, I don't know how to do that stuff. This comes back to Lisa's magic wand.
Yeah.
Just make it happen for me. So I think that's a huge piece that I think event tech really needs to work on is the ability to talk to each other and make it easier on the event planners and the meeting planners and seamless for the attendees. I think that's where some of that focus really needs to happen. But then again, we're going to have to test and test and test to make sure that those integrations are working.
Talking about Lisa's wish list, you're talking about API and some things that you want to have, but I'd like to know more features that you'd like to have on event text and either for floor plans and apps. So if you could give us a few insights and ideas and features you'd like to have, ideally, that would be super welcome. I'm going to grab my pen here. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that, the biggest one on my wish list is always that API. We are
Mhm.
all using, there's never one software that does everything, nor should there be, by the way. So
Mhm.
these software companies that are trying to be everything, I always tell them to stop it because, you need to be specialized in what you know. So because we do have these different tech stacks that we use for different shows and those can change, right? Depending on the client, depending on the show, having that, integration already created, or some way to do an easy API, or, even if somebody like literally just gave me the checklist that says to connect, Expo FP with session board, right? Here's your checklist for Zapier, right? Do this, do this, do like that would be great, right? Like
Mhm.
then I can do it, right? So, but having those integrations, we use HubSpot for some of our clients. So we're always talking about, okay, how can we integrate this with HubSpot, right? We want to be able to get the software into the CRM. Whether it's HubSpot or anything else, because we do our follow-up emails through there. I want to be able to segment groups and be like, okay, I want to talk to my VIPs this way, and I want to talk to my general admission this way. So those systems, having that easy way to converse is really important. And then a lot of what ends up on the Lisa wish list is just things to make life a little bit simpler. Lead capture that's a little bit smoother, right? Sometimes we have Wi-Fi in a building, sometimes we don't.
Mm.
Sometimes we don't because there's no Wi-Fi. Sometimes we don't because it's so bloody expensive. We can't fit it in the budget, right? So
Mhm.
we need to know ahead of time, right? What's going to happen if we do have Wi-Fi, if we don't have Wi-Fi. But then also, if we have horrible Wi-Fi, right, we need to make sure that whatever these systems are that we're using are still going to work,
Work.
whether it's lead capture, whether it's the maps, whether it's, anything else. So that's a piece. But then usually it's pretty system, platform specific. For me, I think I'm in the platform so often I will sit there and Irina knows she gets emails from me and I'm like, hey, how come this doesn't work this way? Because and a lot of times it's Lisa logic, right? In my head, it should work this way, where you all may have a different logic that when you explain it to me, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I still want it the other way, but that makes sense. But it's usually very, very platform specific. So I may want, a on an admin side for the back end profile to be easier to navigate through. That's usually a
Mhm.
big piece. I want to reduce clicks it's a time issue for me, right? So if I have to go in and I have to click on the profile and then I have to click somewhere else within the profile to go find this piece of information, I'm going to come back to you and say, well, why isn't it just on the front end of the profile that I can see, right? So there's a lot of things that are reducing clicks. And then sometimes, and here's the big one, reporting.
Reporting.
Reporting drives me nuts across platform. I want to be able to go in there and say, how many people purchase this type of ticket and are located in California, right? Like I want to be able to go in, and a lot of these different platforms have pre-created reporting, which is great, but sometimes I need more. So there was one platform that I was using, and every time we pulled the attendance report, it would give me first and last name, company, and whether they attended the session or not. And the client looked at me and said, well, why isn't the person's title in there? It's in their profile. Why isn't it on the report? And I went, well, that's a really good question. And it's still not on the report. And so now I have to pull that report out and I have to do a VLOOKUP of that CSV file against another CSV file to pull the title in every month, right? That's not a useful amount of time for me to be spending on that when I should be doing something else. So reporting and being able to customize reporting across platforms, I think all platforms can do better with that. And I think the platforms, even if they want to do pre-formatted reporting, I think they actually need to go reach out to their clients and customers and say, well, what do you need in the reporting? Versus we're going to make the reporting based on what we think you need. Because even if I have another platform that I have to cross-reference on attendance, I have to cross-reference one attendance report with a different attendance report to get the attendance information I need. And it's just not a useful use of my time. I have other things that I need to be spending time on. So I think reporting is almost always at the top of my wish list of things that I want to change on reporting, and have either the capability to filter it myself or be able to say, hey, I need this report. I need you guys to go create this report so I can pull this information because that's what we need for this client, right? And that's going to change. So the more flexibility we have in reporting, I think will be much more useful as we continue to move forward.
We actually are the ones to blame on the reporting side as well, because for years we had an option to connect your Google Analytics account, and then we were sending all of the information to Google Analytics. But first, majority of our customers just did not connect their Google Analytics account. And second, just when you go to Google Analytics accounts, you need a PhD there to figure out what's where. So we just looked at it and like, okay, we are kind of giving them ultimate flexibility, but at the same time, only small fraction of users actually get the results. Something is wrong here. And we just a couple of months, I don't remember, last month, released just built-in statistics where the same information collected from Google actually is taken there, just essentials are shown, the graphs there, but from the point of view of organizer, you don't really need to do anything. Just click the button statistics and you have all of the major parameters, and you're still able to go get your analytics details if you want to, and you can export everything that's there into Excel files and then do bigger dipping. So yeah, it was a little bit, we were slow on that, but hopefully we're catching up with your wish list.
And that's great. Yeah, and it's hard too, because a lot of times with, event planners and meeting planners, we're working with a client, and the larger the client gets, the harder it is to maybe incorporate Google Analytics, right? To find that one person that has the login to Google Analytics before you have to go through an entire IT department and then past legal first, right? To get access to it. So, being able to have real-time data is also really essential. We do a lot of hybrid events, And we still do a lot of virtual events in addition to our live events. And we have clients who are like, how many people are on my, in my room right now? Some platforms give you that real-time data, some don't. And it's a pretty simple question, right? How many people are online? They know because they're tracking it. So let me see it right then and there. So there's a lot of things where it's just, if some of these platforms sent out a survey that said, what are the questions that your clients are asking you regarding reporting, they would get so much feedback about these are the things I have to answer every month. And it's really hard to answer, right? So reporting's always very high. And then, like I said, it's just, there's some platform specific things. I'm like, this platform's amazing. It works amazing. There's 99% of it I wouldn't change, but now there's one thing that's on the Lisa list, right? So
Yeah.
there's always something. And I think that's the important thing, Ross, back to your comment about working with these companies and never looking outside that box. These companies that are providing these platforms, they need to continually update as well. And not just for like the shiny object cool things, but just some of that basic structure to make sure that it continues to work well for their clients and continue to update it so that the clients are still getting new features that are really crucial. Some shiny object ones are fun, but make sure that I'm getting the really crucial ones too.
But I have, I think the last question for Lisa. How do you understand that event tech you invested in was worth it?
Yeah, for us, a lot of times it's the less complaints we get, the better the event tech was worth it.
That's perfect criteria, actually.
Yeah, the ultimate criteria.
Yeah, the less emails I get, the better. But that goes back to my comment about, get registered this year, right? Check-in was seamless, right? And that was my first phone call to them was, oh my gosh, you guys, check-in was seamless. And for that particular event, we had all our volunteers who were checking people in. And then we had the one staff member who was, dealing with the people that had, special, unique circumstances. We'll put it that way. That staff person was my 22-year-old daughter. So for her to not come back to me and be like, I'm never speaking to you again. You guys are all right. It was even easy for her to deal with, people that had issues, right? So, and that's where we look at it. One, did it provide value to the attendees, right? Does Expo FP provide value to the attendees? Absolutely. Is it easy to use for the attendees? Absolutely. Does it potentially provide more value for our exhibitors, especially the ones who are downstairs, right? Absolutely. So we kind of go through that and say, okay, that compared to the cost, and what did it take away? Well, it took away the stupid PDFs, which people still ask me for a printed map, by the way. It drives me crazy. It takes away all of those questions, right? Of how do I get here? I mean, you're always going to have some, right? Where's this particular vendor, or I remember this vendor, but I don't know their name, right? But they sell this kind of stuff, right? That's normal. But if we can go through and evaluate, here's all the things that it did, right? Here's the pain points it took away, from the attendee standpoint, from the administration standpoint. Did it potentially even take away having to have a staff member, which is great when we can take that away, and let that staff member focus on something else that's, a little bit more urgent? Then that's how we look at things and evaluate, was that cost worth it? We've had times that we said, no, it wasn't, right? Seemed like a great idea at the time. But for whatever reason, maybe the tech didn't work properly, whatever it may be, it ended up not being, worth it. But for us, in the majority of the cases, if we're providing value to the attendees, if we're providing, an easier day to the attendees, and then also an easier day to our staff, then that's almost always going to be worth the cost, unless the cost is some exorbitant amount of money. But those are the things that we look at. And you know, did I get complaints? I love when I don't get complaints. So, you know, the complaints are the things we usually have to focus on and go, okay, we did something wrong, right? Or we didn't communicate. It's one of those two things.
Mhm.
So that's really what we look at.
Just to add to Lisa's answer, I would like to know from Ross, from the floor plan provider's perspective, how would you demonstrate that it's worth it, the investment?
Money. You need to make a lot of money from the floor plans. Right now, I'm just I see it as a biggest missed opportunity because some of our clients are making literally over hundreds of thousands of dollars on just advertisement on the floor plan. It's a separate revenue stream when you can sell ads within the booth. You can sell featured listings where some listings are more like searchable than others and just pop up at the top of your search. Then you have all of the banners at the top of the map. If you're using interactive floor plan, and actually there's tons of people who use interactive floor plans. I mean, we can show you data when people are opening app. There's, if not majority, but close to majority of people are using it for the floor plan, finding some information on the floor plan. That's one of the main eyeballs. If you receive that many eyeballs, and if your company can receive many more eyeballs, if you pay like small amount of extra money, exhibitors are willing to pay this money. And that's a revenue stream that does not compromise any of the other sponsorship opportunities that you already have. So in this revenue stream, companies should make significantly more money than they invest in our floor plan. Our average floor plan price last time I checked was the one that we actually designed for our clients, because some of them, they can do it themselves for nickels. But our average price is $1,700. When you can get back $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 back, it's really a good investment, and it's just purely money in addition to receiving all of this useful functionality that your attendees enjoy. So right now I feel a little bit of frustration because we kind of did not do our job of letting our organizers, our clients, know that there's such an opportunity. But at the same time, there's a big unrealized potential. I really hope that organizers will create a new revenue stream with floor plans and start making more money with that.
I think that during this webinar, we were able to answer the questions about how to choose the right event tag. And thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you so much, Ross, for your time. It was a pleasure to have you here. And for the audience who will be watching and listening to us, please do put likes, comments, and if you have any idea on the future topic of our webinar, let us know in comments on LinkedIn or on YouTube. And just have a nice and effective week. Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Thank
bye.
you, Lisa. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.